everybody, and welcome to Magic by Design. If this is your first time joining us, first of all, welcome. Thanks so much for tuning in. Magic by Design is a podcast in which we are aiming to watch and review every Disney animated feature film. Each and every week, we break down a movie from the Disney canon in an attempt to discover the secrets behind the magic. We watched Disney's 24th animated feature this week, The Fox and the Hound. But before I relive one of my earliest childhood traumas, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Ken, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host / brother. We're the best of friends, Garrett. Gar, how are you?
First of all, it must be noted, you just did the intro in one take.
Yeah.
Which is very uncanny.
I'm very proud of myself.
Good job. And
switched on today.
It's a thing the listeners will never notice because you always edit it. But you did it in one take, and I think you should be rewarded for such a thing.
Give myself a pat in the back there.
People say I'm mean on podcasts, and all I do is bury my podcast co-hosts. I'm very nice and supportive, I'll have you know.
Yeah, this is the first time you've complimented me on the podcast.
And second of all, did you know basset hounds have long ears to waft the scent into their nose?
I did not.
There's a fun basset hound fact for you.
Is a basset hound and a bloodhound the same thing? I think it's different, isn't it?
I think they're different. I don't think bloodhounds had the long ears.
Did they not?
I'm now looking at a list of basset hound fun facts. I knew the ears fun fact, but I've since Googled basset hound fun facts. Basset hounds are great at scent work. Of course, this film is entirely based around that. Basset hounds are intelligent and independent, even bordering on stubborn. Again, true to this, you know?
Yeah, they really did their research here.
Basset hounds have loud voices. Is Copper loud?
Copper is quite soft-spoken, I would say.
Yeah. Basset hounds have more bones per pound than any other dog.
That's because they're quite compact, isn't it?
Very bony dog. That's why they have ruffled heads.
Oh, he's so cute. Copper's cute. That's my first take.
Basset hounds can be prone to glaucoma, thrombothia, and bloat. They're highly social, again, you know, especially with foxes, apparently. Basset hounds' droopy ears and eyes should be regularly cleaned.
I think that's true of all dogs.
Basset hounds should be kept in a fenced, secure area. Does a barrel count as a fenced, secure area?
Well, he was tied to it, so maybe.
They apparently don't make a good guard dogs. That's why you have, what's the name of the old dog?
Chief.
Chief, there you go. That's what Chief is, the guard dog. And then Basset hounds' spines are prone to damage. Aren't we all?
Yeah, I mean, I could damage my spine if I fell down.
I could damage my spine just standing up. Never mind it with, like, blood force impact.
We're getting into winter now, Gar, and that's Chief falling time.
Ah, yes.
The ice. Chief there.
Yeah, very good. But in fairness, you don't have to commute anymore. You don't have to go anywhere anymore.
That's true. I remember during last winter, I was walking to work, and, like, there's an entrance to the school nearby our house, and I stopped for a second to let cars pass, and then I knew. I was like, oh God.
Game over.
This is an icy patch, and I, like, legs up in the air, total, like, pratfall.
Was there people there to laugh at you?
No, but I felt very embarrassed nonetheless.
Did you get hurt?
I was okay. My back was a bit sore.
I mean, good, yes. It's happy that you're fine.
You started so well.
And now I'm gleefully looking forward to your pain. Yeah, so we don't have to leave the house in winter. We can just hole up inside for the whole 6 months. We can pass it by montage like this film does.
This is one of the unexpected benefits of working from home. Less chance of falling.
Wouldn't you love to be able to, like, hit a button and, like, you know, I don't really want to do the next 3 months. And like a film, you can just do, like, montage.
Yeah.
Which for me, a montage would be like sitting at my computer typing, doing a podcast. Week is over. The variety of things I do in a week.
Sitting at my computer, binge eating, sleeping, crying.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, I thought about that recently. I thought about that recently. I think I kind of like, if there was an option to freeze myself until this is over, and then come out, and then, like, try and catch up on how it went and what happened.
What if it gets worse from here, though? What if these are the good times?
Yeah, what if they never wake me up?
Yeah, what if it just keeps getting worse exponentially until the Earth explodes from one of the various ways in which the Earth can currently explode?
Yeah, I think it's exploding figuratively at the moment, but there's a very good chance it could actually explode in the future.
Yes, well, it will. There's the heat death of the universe. We'll all die eventually. It's inevitable.
Do you think we're the first universe?
No.
The first incarnation of this?
No.
I had a theory when I was in school, and I said it to my geography teacher, and I could see the existential dread on her face as I said it. I was like...
Who was your geography teacher?
Mrs. Scannell.
Oh, yes.
You're not a fan?
Me and Mrs. Scannell had some great times.
You had a feud going at one stage?
A very long feud. I feel bad, somewhat, because, like, you know, eventually you reach the stage of self-reflection where you can realize you were a bit of a runt and terrible and awful and annoying, but I will always insist she started it.
You just finished it.
I just finished it. but she did start it.
I remember, I think it was second class, so I would have been about 14. Or second year, sorry. Second class would have been like 8. But I said to her, who's to say that this is the first cycle of this universe?
Yeah, we could have blown up a couple times now.
Yeah. Then it comes back to the start, then there's another big bang, and we start all over again.
Yeah, we all die, and everything is like, oh no, and then it all starts again, and then we do this all over again. Or we're just a simulation, and we're being run like the third or fourth time. I wonder, did we have a podcast in all forms of these simulations?
But did podcasts exist in all 4?
Were we brothers in all 4? That might not even happen.
We were the best of friends. I love that song.
It's clearly wormed its way into your head. It should be a Randy Newman song.
Yeah. It does have a very Randy Newman-esque feel to it.
It's like, we're the best of friends. It's
Tinkling
basically
the ivories.
Yeah, it's basically like a prequel to You've Got a Friend in Me. You've Got a Friend in Me basically ripped it off.
I think, yeah.
You've got a friend in me. We're the best of friends. Same song.
It fits.
It's literally, it's the same song.
So let's dive in here, Gar. Have you seen the film before?
No, we're still in I have now increasingly realised that, like, of the, what are we on, 24?
24.
Of the 24 films that we have watched so far, I've seen exactly none of them. At least in their entirety. I've probably seen little bits here and there of all of them, or not all of them, of many of them. But I've not seen any of these films in their entirety, which is quite remarkable.
This was a firm favourite as a kid, but I must admit I haven't watched it in years. I had kind of a strange relationship with this film back in the day.
Did that scare you?
In that I loved it. It didn't scare me, but I dreaded watching it because I found the ending so desperately sad as a kid.
Because he falls in love.
It was a film of 2 halves for me. I love the first half. With
the best of friends.
We're getting to know these lovable characters, but all the while knowing that the second half was coming, leading to this feeling of tension and anxiety.
People get hit by trains.
Yeah.
All the drama.
It's a good time. This would become a trend for me in the upcoming films, Gar. As you know, I was a bit of a crier.
You and you're hiding behind the couch during Beauty and the Beast.
Especially in the 90s. Gar, in my defence, Disney went for the gut punch several times during the coming years. It was pretty much in their playbook for every film. Like, the first thing that happens in this film is Todd's mom gets offed.
Yeah, this is in the full period of parents die. All the parents die. Every parent gets killed. And it's an interesting narrative device that they use over and over again. And I guess it creates like a room to grow for a character, and creates uncertainty for a character, and creates a world in which they cannot be comfortable and familiar, which is a world that challenges them, which in theory should be a world that is interesting to watch them navigate. So I think that's why they usually do it, because a world where people grow up with their parents and have happy, well-adjusted lives don't generally make for particularly good films.
So what you're saying is it's kind of an easy in for the hero's journey.
It is an easy in for the hero's journey. It immediately puts them behind the 8 ball.
Good call. Production began on The Fox and the Hound in 1977. The film marked the last involvement of the remaining members of Disney's 9 Old Men, as after that, the development was handed over to a new generation of animators.
Well, that happened during this film, really, didn't it?
So it was like a film of 2 halves, because the older animators initiated the project, but then they all retired or left and handed over to a new generation.
I wonder, like, you see this in the animation, and I'm not sure, is this like a consequence of how it's been converted through the years, or is it just a weird thing about the way it was animated in the first place? But there are like certain scenes and frames that are extremely like low resolution.
Yeah, almost blurry. I would have commented yesterday.
Yeah, the color looks washed out. It looks blurry. It's very strange, and like sometimes it's literally like back to back within a scene, where one frame will look fine and full of color and detail, and then the next one will look like blurry and weirdly off. And as I said, I'm not sure, is that a consequence of maybe it was converted through different formats and done so badly, because on the Disney Plus version it is neither 4:3 nor widescreen, so I have no idea what it's meant to be, or no idea what it was released in. But the Disney Plus version isn't either, because it has some like smaller black bars on the side of the screen, so I have no idea what it's meant to be. So maybe it is a weird consequence of being converted through different formats and kind of torn apart a little too much, or maybe it is just some weird quirk of the original animation, because I would have said it's the first film we've watched that's been like that. Like, some of the films have had bad animation. I'm looking at you, Aristocats.
Yeah, I've noticed. Yeah, we've seen the bad animation in the recent films. I've noticed that blurriness in other films. So maybe it is an aspect ratio thing. Yeah,
or just a conversion to digital, or conversion through these various different formats in which they've been released through the years, and whichever version that's gone up. I don't know. Maybe we'll ask Disney. Disney, clarify for me. Why does it look a little blurry?
The answer is not forthcoming, so we'll move on.
You expected Disney to drop it in the middle of the podcast?
I don't know. They can hear us. They're everywhere, as we know.
Disney probably do have our microphone mic'd. Can you mic a microphone? I guess.
Bug, you mean?
Yeah, same thing.
You said they mic'd our mic.
Yeah. What do you think a bug is? It's a microphone.
No, it's not. Is it?
Yes.
I suppose so.
It's a small recording device. What did you think a bug was?
I don't know, like a digital thing, like
A digital
like a chip?
recording device? Yes. They are tiny microphones, Ken.
I retract my statement.
All right.
The film's release was delayed by over 6 months following the abrupt departure of Don Bluth and his team of animators. They left to found his own studio.
Is he any relation to the Bluth family from Arrested Development?
No.
Okay.
But his company rose meteorically only to crash and burn, so the narrative is similar.
Ah, there you go. Gene! Did he make anything?
They'd be known for the films like All Dogs Go to Heaven, The Secret of Niv. They also did things like, I think they did The Land Before Time.
Ah, there we go. A beloved film of my childhood that I actually don't remember anything about. I should rewatch that.
What's interesting as well, the last big film they did was Anastasia, which was released in around 98, 99. And I think they did one more after that, but it was the last successful one they did. And the funny thing is, a lot of people think that's a Disney film. But
I thought it was a Disney film, so there you go.
It makes sense because the DNA of their films shares a lot of similarities because he worked at the studio and the style of their films was developed in Disney.
And it's interesting how Disney would probably slightly leave that style behind so that then they would carry forward that torch of old school Disney animation.
The Fox and the Hound was eventually released in theatres in July 1981. It was initially received with mixed reviews from critics, though it was a moderate success at the box office. The critics praised the animation and voice acting of the film, but believed that the film was not groundbreaking enough. I thought it was a step forward. Not so much like it didn't break new ground, but it was a step forward from the last 2 decades. Over time, however, the film has become known as a Disney classic. At the time of its release, it was the most expensive animated film ever produced, costing $12 million. I think this is not necessarily a reflection of the production, but likely the increasing inflation and climbing Hollywood production costs in general.
Yeah.
Films are just more expensive to make.
And eventually they completely gave up on it. Of course, it's not to be confused with the Fox and the Crow, which is a children's poem, which I once performed in Fetch Matthew. And I believe that's the year we won.
You won the trophy, yeah.
Yeah.
Took home the W.
And then the next year I had like a solo line and we came last. So work that out for yourself.
The Fesh Matthew is a competition that's a tradition here in Cork where we live, and people perform songs and orations and poems, and schools participate every year. I have a theory that everyone gets a turn with that trophy, to be honest.
Do you think so? Because we did go from...
You went from being the champs to last. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I don't think we got that much dramatically worse, but maybe we did. Maybe it was solely my "I'll drag you out of bed by the hair." I remember the line, even though it's been like 15 years.
Do you think you flew too close to the sun?
Perhaps.
We got complacent.
Burned down. Because I think we might have finished like second or third the year before, which was pretty solid. We got pizza when we won, which was nice.
Free pizza is always good.
Winning poetry comp. Did you ever enter Fresh Matthew?
We were supposed to, but we couldn't get our stuff together.
Nah. Miss Cooney was like, nah. Regina shot you down. You're not good enough.
We didn't take it seriously.
Random people getting shout outs on this podcast.
So this film is kind of fraught in a sense because there's an internal struggle between the way things had always been done and new ideas. The new animators are striving for a more serious form of art and storytelling, where the older guys, they do see it as an art form, but what they're really going for is kind of children's entertainment and slapstick. And
well, like, to be fair, and I think I would commend most of these, I think pretty much all of these Disney films for, is they're never like lowest common denominator lazy children's entertainment. And like the kind of children's animation we would have seen in like the 2000s that emerged, that are just like pop culture references, bright colors, loud music, a dance number, all the tropes that made, like Trolls, all the tropes that make up these kind of films.
Celebrities doing voices, especially popular pop artists.
Like none of these films that we've watched have been that. At any stage whatsoever, it has not devolved into that kind of like just brainless, cynical attempt at producing children's entertainment with no worth or value. Like all of these films, at least, are trying to tell an interesting story. Some may fail, but like all of them are trying. And maybe it's the DreamWorks era that kind of kicked in. Like Shrek, I think, is a very good film, but I think films that Shrek inspired tend to be a lot less interesting, and maybe some of the DreamWorks films made after Shrek tend to be a lot less interesting.
Yeah, maybe the intent was still there, but the ideas were just kind of past their sell-by date, I guess.
And like everyone runs out of ideas. You can't keep making films until the end of time, because nobody has that many ideas, and the few people that do are genius savants who keep making masterpieces. But even like Steven Spielberg doesn't write all his own films, No,
his skill is in choosing the projects and the people.
And navigating them to a good, successful end. He has an eye for how to make something, which is an equally valid skill set, but he doesn't doesn't necessarily have to come up with all the creative ideas. And in fairness, neither did Disney, because they adapted the hell out of everything under the sun to avoid...
Anytime they tried not to, it was a disaster.
It was something of a disaster. Aristocats. I'm going to bury Aristocats until the end of time.
Still rock bottom of your list, Gar.
Far and away. Like, you go back and listen to the Saludos Amigos episode and how much I did not like that film. And then think about, I put Aristocats lower than that film. Think about that. But yeah, it's actually something I was thinking about yesterday, about how I really do admire that these films never became like cynical, like just churn it out, slap some bright colors in there, everyone's happy kind of children's entertainment. And maybe children were better off for that they had these kind of... But we've had Pixar films this entire time, so it's not like we've had a dearth of quality children's entertainment over the last decade, and we've had some of the best children's television of all time over the last decade.
I think everyone views their generation with like certain things that are like bad and certain things that are great, and generations back then would have seen things that are new as threatening. And I suppose Disney was becoming more of a company in this time, a corporation, so like
especially when like Walt Disney dies, and then it is like, fair enough, like the Disney family are still involved, but like the creative driving force, the creative genius behind it, if you will, it's gone. So at that stage it is a corporation. It is a for-profit corporation producing entertainment for money,
and they're very reluctant to stray from the playbook that brought them to the dance.
And like, that is not to say that these things are not of artistic merit. That is not to say that these things are purely cynical cash-ins. It is just simply to say that the bottom line here is to get people in the door.
Pretty much.
Which, like, there's nothing wrong with it. The people would get very cynical about that. The people are like, oh, it's ruining art. It's like, there's lots of art that you love that would never have been made were someone not bankrolling it. So,
but Disney does fund art because a lot of they have an animation program. Their younger animators are given resources and time and money to make shorts, and that's how they kind of develop their people. So it does exist, but they invest in art when the stakes are lower. When there's shareholders, as you said, and money on the line, Disney just cannot accept failure. That's a symptom of the juggernaut that they've become. If you look at, like, we talked about the live action wing of the company, like, one failure, you're gone. John Carter, there was The Lone Ranger. You can't even flop once. It's considered unacceptable.
And so those two films we talked about before basically killed live action at Disney. They don't make them anymore.
Not original ones, anyway.
They make Marvel films, they make Star Wars films, and then they might make the odd weird film, like that Harrison Ford and a Wolf film. That was a Disney film, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Fox, so they own it now.
But yeah, that's on Disney. So I assume that that's a Disney distributed film anyway. So there's some odds and ends that they'll support.
Even then, that's a remake, though.
Yeah, but for the most part, this idea of like big, ambitious, original live action is gone because John Carter flopped and The Lone Ranger flopped.
Oh, we watched that recently. I will stand by The Lone Ranger being a good film.
Other than the cultural appropriation.
Well, you know.
Other than this film may contain outdated cultural depictions. A film from 2011 or whenever that was out.
As we said, Garrett, the animation is a marked improvement from the sketchy style that we've had in recent times. Those heavy lines are gone. The transitions are smoother. We're seeing colours and outlines that are more crisp and fluid. A return to that customized palette rather than everything just has that black outline because it's Xeroxed.
Yeah, so everyone looks natural in the environment instead of just like, here's our uniform template for this thing.
And as I said, we can see why, because the animation for this film was turned over mid-production to a generation of directors and animators, which included John Lasseter, John Musker, Ron Clements, who most recently teamed up to do Moana. They did a lot of the really successful films in the 90s. Glenn Keane. Fun fact, Tim Burton worked on this film.
There you go.
Brad Bird, Henry Selick, Chris Buck, Mike Gabriel, and Mark Tyndall, all of whom would finalize the animation and complete the film's production. These animators had moved through the in-house animation training program at Disney and would play an important role in the Disney renaissance of the late 80s and early 90s.
Not just Disney.
Well, the entire 90s.
Yeah, the entire animation renaissance of the 90s.
It's a who's who of current Disney stalwarts. They're the new old men, if you think about it.
And not even just Disney. It's like Pixar and like Iron Giant was Warner Brothers?
Yeah.
So, which is a Brad Bird joint.
Brad Bird has always been kind of a freelancer, so he's most associated with Pixar, but he's kind of weaved in and out other areas.
So you can see that this generation is the generation that produced pretty much most of the films you love over the last 20, 30 years.
So it's weird because it's not an entire film that's a departure point, like the end of one era and the beginning of another. It's almost like a halfway.
Split down the middle.
Because you can almost tell which parts were done by the older animators and which were done by the new.
Can some would say The Fox and the Hound is a metaphor for the two sides of Disney coming together to pass the torch to one another. The foxes of the old generation and the hounds of the new generation coming together to learn from one another, to appreciate each other, and then ultimately to go their separate ways in the end, but appreciate the experiences they had and go on to live happy, productive lives afterward.
That's a lovely segue, Gar, but they clashed at every turn.
Don't you worry about it, it's fine.
This film is based on the award-winning 1967 novel of the same name by American novelist
An American book?
Yeah.
God.
It's by Daniel P. Mannix.
It's a revolution, and it wasn't bad, so there you go. American art is finally coming good. It only took until the end of the 60s.
Todd and Copper struggle to preserve their friendship despite their emerging instincts and surrounding social pressures demanding them to be adversaries. That's the crux of the story.
It's interesting, like, the point of this story is two people who are utterly unlike and should not get along with each other do in fact get along with each other despite the societal pressures on top of them that should drive them apart. And, like, would people cancel this film for being political in 2020?
I think
racism is bad is basically the moral of this film.
I think there'd be two camps. There'd be like, that's just PC gone wrong and it's teaching kids to be sissies and all this, and then there'd be people who kind of hold it up as an example of how we should move forward, that nobody is born with hatred and that, you know, we learn those behaviours and we're taught them, or societal structure forces these points of view on us instead of us forming our own opinions about people and societies.
So it's interesting, like, people would legitimately, there would be some people who would push back on this for being political, and this is from 1979? 81, there you go, I know my years. 1981, like, back then we were like, and this is like Disney mass marketed entertainment with a broad message of racism is bad, you know, people from different camps can come together, get along and live happy productive lives together.
Take people for face value for who they are rather than what they are or where they came from.
Yes, do not hold discrimination against groups of people because of who they are or where they come from. You can be friends. Best friends, in fact.
It's pretty deep.
And sometimes save each other from bears. It's not even pretty deep, though. Like, that's a simple basic moral for a film, you know?
It's a human principle, yeah.
Get along, everybody likes each other, there's no reason to hate each other. But, like, just the idea that kind of message in 2020 would probably be, like, divisive is kind of depressing, and it actually shows how little people learn from these films. Like, the same people who would probably be racist would be the same people who would be like, oh, I love The Fox and the Hound, you know? It's like, you missed the entire core message of this film.
But where it differs is, like, people who sympathise with Todd and the widow, who say that tolerance and acceptance and, you know, kindness and love is the way forward, rather than, yeah, that fox is trying to
He's a
mess
menace.
things up. He's messing things up. He's on his land. He should have the right to shoot him.
Foxes have no business in this kind of place.
Yeah.
Suburbs. Something like that. That's what Trump would say.
And then it's like, Copper's a sissy. He's just toughen up and start hating the foxes.
Yeah.
Or blacks.
Well, Ken.
Sorry. It was there. It was on the table. Mickey Rooney played adult Todd and Kurt Russell played Copper.
I don't like either of the adult voices, I have to say. They sound too old.
I love the kid voices.
The kid voices are so, like, dumb and kiddish. I really like them. And, like, at the very end of the film, they play, like, we'll be best friends forever, right, Copper? Yeah, Todd. And then, like, the yeah, Todd delivery is like, it's so kid-like. It's great.
Yeah, it's so natural. It's actually a young Corey Feldman that played young Copper.
There you go now.
Who would rise to prominence in the late 80s as a teen star.
Mm-hmm.
He's not really in the mix these days, but, you know, he did this
Few
film.
teen stars are.
Yeah, so...
That's your Matthew Broderick.
Yeah, like, the early part of the film is probably my favourite because it just feels so natural. As you
like
said, the
wholesome.
performances and wholesome, and it just feels so... It's like a film hug.
It does start very, like, bleak and foreboding. That intro is, like, sad and, like, not much music to it. And fair enough, it leads to the death of his mother, or father. I'm not sure it did this. Mother. So like, it is leading to something, like, bad. So the foreboding sense is natural there, but it's like, oh no, what are we watching? It's very depressing. And there's some, like, orchestral score, which is quite cool. I don't think there's a ton. Obviously, Fantasia has an orchestral score, but I don't think there's a ton of orchestral scores in these films.
No, it was very noticeable. So I think this was the first one in a while, at least. But in terms of the recording quality, it was probably on a par higher than anything that's been produced to date.
Yeah, and it meant, like, maybe, I don't think the whole film was orchestral, but certainly that opening track was.
Yeah,
like, full-on orchestral. They were like, let's go for it.
I'm stealing one of Nicole's fun facts from later, but it was produced by a 51-piece orchestra.
There you go. And you can tell, you can hear it. I love when you can hear an orchestra. And sometimes it doesn't even fit, but it's like, it's an orchestra. Go for it.
Yeah, it kind of raises the blood in a way that a normal soundtrack doesn't.
But yeah, that whole intro sets the tone for, like, a bleak, somber film, and the film isn't really that.
That's what I like about it. It has its moments of what you might call bleakness or things that make you reflect and sad, but it has a nice pace to it. Then it kind of brings you up and brings you down. So it's a kind of a nice ride rather than being too bleak in long stretches or too inconsequential and happy in other places.
It is well balanced.
Yes, I'd agree with that. The young bloods and the old guard clashed over the story in a couple of places. Concerns were raised over the handling of the scene in which Chief is hit by a train, which was controversially changed from his death into a non-fatal injury in which he merely suffered a broken leg. This resulted in a fight among the young animators who favoured Chief dying to act as motivation for Copper-hating Todd, and the older animators who were hesitant to kill off a main character because it had never been done to date.
Have those animators seen Bambi?
Yeah.
In which a major character is killed off?
A major character, I wouldn't call her a main character because
she is the main character. She's the mother of the freaking protagonist.
She's there to do some heavy lifting to set the story, but
would you say the Chief is more of a main character than Bambi's mom?
No! That's true. Senior animators pulled rank and they eventually won. Another fight erupted when Reiterman, who's famous for a lot of the recent films, in thinking that the film lacked a strong second act, decided to add a musical sequence of 2 swooping cranes voiced by Phil Harris and Charo, who's a famous Spanish singer, I think.
There you go.
Who would sing a silly song entitled Scooby Dooby Dooby Doo, Let Your Body Turn Coo.
Thankfully that got cut.
To Todd after he's dropped in the forest when the widow takes him.
Scooby Dooby Dooby Doo, drop yourself in goo. I've got some work to do.
Young animators argued that it was a distraction from the story and it was ultimately cut. They're really doing Phil Harris dirty in the last few films. They cut him from the last 2.
Poor guy.
After he drove a lot of their successful films in the 60s and 70s. Todd's mom, Gar, as we said, got the Bambi treatment, so
yes.
There are similarities to Bambi here again. It's like, and Gar, we've talked about this. Bambi is almost like the template for what a great Disney film is. So I'm not surprised that they're using that as their North Star as such.
So you're going for a modern, because it's weird to think going for a modern Bambi, because this film was like released 30 years after Bambi. Like that's longer than I've been alive. So when you think it's weird to think of this film as trying to do something Bambi, because we're watching them week to week, so we don't like feel the time difference between them. But like this film is 30 years apart from Bambi, so it's very easy to think these are the people who grew up watching Bambi, wanting to make something inspired by Bambi, and then maybe the people who helped make Bambi. Yeah, some of those people would have been involved pushing back on it, being like, no, we can't do that. It's like, you did it in the freaking 50s. It's like, oh no, sorry.
Can you mention it there? Copper and Todd, there's a line at the start of the movie going, we'll be friends forever, won't we? That was a major foreshadowing. I just thought that was a very funny line. It was just like...
not even remotely subtle.
Yeah, they're literally like, again, we were talking about the gut punch playbook. They're only doing that just so they can tear you down later.
Turn to the camera and look you straight in the eye. Won't we?
And linked to that, Chief has a dream and he expositions the whole conflict between dogs and foxes, which I thought was the best.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, was that a badger? No, it's a fox. I'm going to kill the fox. And then Todd is like, what?
Todd,
be
by
friends?
the way. Look at Todd. Has there ever been a good Todd?
Well, this is Todd with 1D, and I only know Todd's with 2Ds. So maybe 1D is good, 2Ds is bad.
Rod and Todd?
I think that's 2Ds, I think. I'm
but
not sure.
Still, even a 2D Todd. Has there been a good 2D Todd? I'm going to type Todd into Google. Todd Coronation Street. Do you know who that is?
I can't remember.
There's Todd Cantwell, who I don't know who that is either. Oh no, he plays for Norwich. Not a good Todd. Todd Mullis. Do you know who Todd Mullis is?
Nope.
Todd Mullis sentenced to life in prison for killing his wife. Do you want another point? Further proof that all Todds are bad. Like seriously, I can't think of a single good Todd.
Todd to me just seems like he's going to be a jerk.
Yeah. All Todds are jerks.
Coming towards the end of the film, Gar, I thought the fight scene with the bear was well executed. It was thrilling and high paced, and it drove us to a really climactic conclusion.
I quite liked how the bear was like, hey you think you're the villain of the film, Gunman? No.
I'm now the villain. That bear was terrifying.
They play a lot of the hits in this, by the way. They age via montage, which is, of course, a Disney classic, which is, in fairness, different from aging via song. But sometimes aging via song and montage are one, like, say, The Lion King, of course.
Or Tarzan.
Or Tarzan, indeed. Aging via montage is a very special Disney classic.
I, for one, am aware of that trope, but I'm completely on board for it.
Yes, especially with good songs. Also, of course, Fall in Love with One Glance. Oof.
Wasn't a song this time. They didn't even give us a good song.
No, and they even did we're going to run around fields and whatever for a while, looking at each other, forlorn and happy. Forlorn and happy are two different things. literally polar opposites, but nonetheless.
Wrapping up on the story here, Gar, I respect that they stuck to the bittersweet ending. I feel like they'd find it hard to resist a more sugary ending in 2020. Like, Todd gets to go back to the farm and he still lives in the forest, but he comes back now and again and they're all friends and everything.
I don't think it's that bittersweet. Like, he lives happily ever after with his fox lady.
Yeah, but I think they accept that they can't be friends anymore. And that's sad.
But they still help each other and save each other at the end.
But it's different. They kind of acknowledge that life is complicated and hard and it's different.
And that we can in fact be racist and apart from each other. That's why people watch Fox. There's like, yes, of course they should be separate at the end. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, segregation works. Quickly to the music here. We won't dwell on it because Nicole does a fabulous job as always. The songs here are cute but nothing memorable. Best of Friends is the pick of the bunch. I've been singing that all day actually. As you said, it has a very Randy Newman-esque vibe to it, but it has a kind of one of those tunes that does worm its way into your head. I listened to Nicole's performance earlier and I didn't remember the song until then, but now that I've heard it again, I'm like singing it to myself all day.
Yeah, he was singing it going into the start we're going to the podcast. He was just nonchalantly singing it to himself because he can't get it out of his brain. As
we noted, Garrett, there's a noticeable addition of a fully orchestrated score. Not common to date, but really does add to the film. They don't use it too much because I imagine it was expensive. So there's a kind of a default score that's kind of a more folksy southern one, for want of a better term.
And then a couple of big orchestral pieces in there just to ramp up the mood.
But the two pack a punch. One note I had here, though, Gar, the sound mixing for the voice performances felt a bit off to me. It doesn't blend with the score, and the voices felt separate from their surroundings at times. That makes sense. They felt a bit hollow.
And I think the bigger thing is I think the lip syncing was a little off sometimes.
Yeah.
Which always makes it feel a little disconnected. I did quite like the song Widow Tweed sang when she was dropping her fox off in the woods.
That's a nice one as well. That's kind of a melancholic.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice sad moment where it's just like, you're my friend and you needed me, but it turns out I also needed you. Now goodbye
forever.
And it's really sad. These aren't the lyrics. I'm approximating the lyrics of the song, but that's the basic message. And it is quite a sad, melancholy moment because it's like she's given up her fox friend.
Yeah, in fairness, I didn't remember that one, but now that you mention it, it is a nice moment in the film that really packs an emotional wallop.
We did mention it while we were talking about voice actors. Tigger and Piglet are in this film.
They are,
which is I don't remember the names of the voice actors. As my
we're not being funny.
Sorry, I'm distracted by the shadow of my hand on the wall. I'm a child. And look at it. It's on the computer too. Oh, so many shadows. But yeah,
like a cat girl.
The voice actors that play Tigger and Piglet are in this film. But very weirdly, they're doing Tigger and Piglet.
Yeah, down to the Tigger laugh.
Yeah, it's like, woohoo! He's doing the Tigger. And like Piglet is doing like the very timid talking and stuttering over his words and repeating himself thing. And it's like Sterling Holloway's been in a bunch of these films doing his Sterling Holloway poo voice, but he's not been like, oh bother, should I get some honey?
It's been degrees of poo.
Yes, it's because that's just how he sounds. That's his voice. But it's very weird that they have the character tics in there, that they have the woohoos and the weird stumbles. That's just a strange thing to do with different characters.
Yeah, it took me out of the movie at times because I found it distracting, especially the Tigger laugh.
And it's because it's not like Pooh has been, as I said, we watched these films back to back to back to back, but Pooh was 4 years earlier in this context. 2 movies. So like, it's not like Pooh is decades ago, so people won't notice. It's like, this is just, we're just going to do the same thing. You like even speculated that they were just reusing voice lines from Winnie the Pooh.
It kind of felt like it because like, it's a very strange choice. You're like, oh, we want you to do this voice in this film. It's like, oh, I did a Disney film before, I'm just going to do that again.
And like, not even the voice. Do the character tics. There you go. It was a very strange thing.
Yeah, so for me, like, the characters don't sound like they're in the same place. Sometimes that also took me out of it, and the sound effects were a bit hollow sounding. They also weren't. I think the film missed a bit of ambient blending, and those techniques would improve as the years would go forward, of course. Fun fact to end on the music here, Gar. This was the last Disney film to have all the credits in the opening and only say at the end, a Walt Disney production when the film was finished. Closing credits with pop songs and or instrumental music would be used from now on, and that's what we know today.
I do, and like, I'm sure we'll get into the staple here of famous musicians sings a version of one of the songs in the film.
Ah, yes.
The Michael Bolton version of Go the Distance.
Today would be Ariana Grande.
Yeah, someone like that singing a version of and it's usually an inferior version of the song, and it's never quite the same. Though the Michael Bolton version of Go the Distance is quite good.
I really like that, actually. It's on my Spotify playlist.
So yeah, that's the new Disney trend that's coming.
Garrett, you'll be glad to hear it was much easier to watch this as an adult, but the theme still struck me as surprisingly relevant for horror times. As I said, nobody is born with hatred or mistrust in their hearts. Young people are taught this way of thinking. The animation is pleasing to the eye for the most part and seems to be leaving behind the shortcuts of the last 2 decades. The green shoots of the Disney Renaissance are beginning to show because the spring came, remember? It was a cute analogy. You didn't get it. It's fine.
Very good, Ken. Good job. Back pat.
Overall, this is an underrated Disney classic with characters you enjoy spending time with, a simple yet thought-provoking story, and beautiful old-school Disney visuals.
I don't know how I feel.
You don't? You're on the fence?
It's been a day, and I don't think this film landed particularly powerfully with me, but it's an enjoyable little film. So I'm still not sure where I am with it, which is a very good podcast takeaway. It's I don't know. You come to for the kind of takes
You're still ruminating on it?
Yeah, I don't think I've quite processed entirely how I feel about
We should have waited a day to do the podcast, maybe, but
maybe it'll take me weeks. Eventually, I'll be like, "Yeah, I liked it," but I don't. I'm certainly not on the side that I hated it. But I'm like, is it particularly interesting minute to minute? Kinda. It kind of wallows in itself in an interesting way, where it's just like we're gonna just sit here with our characters. But it has a few too many of the tropes for me. It's like the fall in love in one glance stuff. I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, but I suppose at the same time, while the new animators were starting to assert their influences,
they don't get rid of that stuff though. That stuff is still in modern Disney films. Don't you pretend like they worked this out.
That's what I'm saying. The old way of doing things is still almost a pillar of Disney filmmaking to this day. So there are some limitations to what you can do and how far you can deviate.
And no, there are none. You shouldn't have limitations. But it's just the way it's introduced so late in the film as well. It's like into the third act, they introduce the fall in love in one glance, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, and the film wouldn't have been any worse if they had removed that. They kind of shoehorned it in there, as you said. And if the film fully focused on the conflict or the resolution of the conflict between Copper and Todd, it would have been enough. It didn't need the love angle.
Yeah, and I guess they might argue that you need somewhere for Todd to go. Like, if he's just standing by himself in the wild, it might be... And actually, to your point, I think that would have been actually a sadder ending. That would have hit the melancholy more. Because he, at least in this ending, he's going off with his love. He's not that bad off. So, maybe the film would have worked better had you taken... And this is actually the longest Disney film in a while. I know, was it Fantasia was an hour and a half, which I think is the longest to date. This is an hour 24, which is about 10 minutes longer than the average recent films have been, which have hit 75 minutes on the button for, I don't know, a good 10 films now at this stage. So maybe if they trim that out, they could have trimmed 10 minutes. Not that this film felt long, mind you. This film actually, it was pretty briskly paced. It went by pretty quick. You didn't feel that extra 10 minutes, certainly.
I didn't find myself watching the clock, that's for sure. Garrett, not much on the legacy of the film itself, but it did give rise to a generation of animators who are still very influential at the Disney organization today, and those people have driven much of the more recent successes as well. Tim Burton didn't stick around in Disney animation, but went on to become a very successful filmmaker and director in his own right.
And would come back from Alice in Wonderland.
And as you say, he worked with them on several projects over the years, most recently the live-action adaptation of Dumbo. So he's still a Disney guy, but he just marches to the beat of his own drum.
There is, of course, The Fox and the Hound 2.
Yes, which is critically panned and said to very much just play the hits of the original.
I'm looking at the plot synopsis for The Fox and the Hound 2 on Wikipedia is 4 paragraphs. 4 pretty detailed paragraphs. It doesn't need to be that long. Apparently they meet, they go to a fair, they have some problems. There's other people around. There you go, Fox and the Hound 2. I don't think the Fox and the Hound is in Kingdom Hearts, which we didn't mention, I don't think, for a few weeks. Winnie the Pooh has quite prominent placement in Kingdom Hearts. He has levels in, I think, all of the games that the 100 Acre Woods is a level in.
What about the Rescuers?
I don't know, that doesn't feature at all in Kingdom Hearts. I'm going to do a quick search for Fox and the Hound Kingdom Hearts, which, of course, I probably should have done before the podcast, but I'm going to do on the podcast. I don't think so. There's Todd and Cooper Kingdom Hearts fan fiction. Would you like that?
No thanks. I think that's going to be a bit pornographic for my liking.
I would think The Fox and the Hound would be a pretty cool world.
It would.
All Disney films would, really, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but they do a nice job of setting the scene of the forest and the houses, and it's a nice little compact world, but it feels like it has a sense of place.
Kingdom Hearts is probably where a lot of my Pooh loves comes from, actually, because I think that would have been my first prolonged exposure to Pooh. I would have had some exposure to Pooh in my youthful days, but he, as I said, a particularly big role in the Kingdom Hearts games, and the song, the do is in Kingdom Hearts as well, so that's where I first heard that, and where the Winnie the Pooh thing came from, I think. Was the genesis of that was in Kingdom Hearts 1, so big fan of Kingdom Hearts and Winnie the Pooh. Clearly they're big fans of him too, because they put him in every game.
There you go, Gar.
I don't think Pooh's a playable character in any of them, though. though, which is quite upsetting.
I like to play as Pooh.
Because in the first one, you go to the 100 Acre Wood and all the pages are missing, so you find the pages around the world to reassemble the books. I can't remember what is in the second one. And the third, in Kingdom Hearts 3, it's just a place where there's a bunch of mini games and you throw turnips at people.
Gar, it's important to give these updates, so don't forget in future, okay?
Yes, to keep people abreast on what is in Kingdom Hearts. What's next? I'm sure you'll mention it in 2 minutes.
Mention it in 2 minutes, Gar.
But mention it now so I know whether it's Kingdom Hearts. Is it Black Cauldron?
Yes.
I don't know if that's Kingdom Hearts. I'll have to look that up. I don't think it is.
Alright, Todds and Coppers, that's nearly it for the show this week. Our resident musical fox Nicole is coming up in just a few moments with a song from the movie. It's always a highlight every week, so be sure to stick around for that after the credits. You can find new episodes of Magic by Design every Monday, where all magical podcasts are downloaded. Check out our website at magicbydesign.buzzsprout.com to find a full list of podcast providers. There, you'll also find all our previous episodes if you're catching up or feel like revisiting an old favourite. Magic by Design is also on all your favourite social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Magic by Design Pod, on Twitter at Magic Design Pod, and on Insta at Magic by Design Pod. If you're a fan of the show, please do consider giving us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice, share the podcast on your socials, or recommend the show to a fellow Disney fan. If you don't give us a 5-star review, our friendship may be changed forever, much like Todd and Copper at the end of the movie. We don't want that, Gar.
We'll be podcast hosts forever, won't we, Ken?
Sure, Gar. We'll be back next week at the same time, same place with Disney's 25th animated feature, The Black Cauldron. But until then, stay safe and remember, forever is a long, long time, and time has a way of changing things. Thanks, Big Mama. Now then, Nicole is here to sing us out with Best of Friends from The Fox and the Hound, and like a bloodhound, she sniffed out some fun facts about the music of the film. This is in no way a comment on Nicole's appearance. The similarities end with her stellar investigative skills. Please don't kill me.
Did you go for Bloodhound instead of Basset Hound so that you wouldn't suggest she has big ears?
Yes, that's exactly why. Let's get out of here before she kills me. Thanks for listening, and take it away, Nicole.
Hello, Disney fans. It's me, your musical correspondent Nicole, coming to you live from my bedroom. This week, a friendship like no other is formed in The Fox and the Hound. The memorable musical score was composed by Buddy Baker, who conducted the 55-piece orchestra heard on the soundtrack. Baker is known as one of Disney's most prolific music men, composing over 200 scores for motion pictures, TV, and theme parks. The songs were composed by collaborators Richard O. Johnston and Stan Fidel, lone songwriter Jim Stafford, and writing duo Richard Rich and Jeffrey C. Patch. Richard O. Johnston and Stan Fidel composed the first song featured on the soundtrack, Best of Friends. Interestingly, Richard O. Johnston is the son of legendary Disney animator Ollie Johnston. This week, I'm taking a look at the song Best of Friends, sung by the incredible Pearl Bailey as the caring owl Big Mama. This piece celebrates the long-time friendship and artistic collaboration of Ollie Johnston and Frank Thomas. Here's my version. I hope you enjoy it.
When you're the best of friends, having so much fun together, you're not even aware you're such a funny pair. You're the best of friends. Life's a happy game. You could clown around forever. Neither one of you sees your natural boundaries. Life's one happy game. If only the world wouldn't get in your way. If only people would just let you play. They say you're both being fools. You're breaking all the rules. They can't understand the magic of your wonderland. When you're the best of friends, sharing all that you discover. When these moments have passed, will that friendship last? Who can say there's a way? Oh, I hope it never ends. 'Cause you're